Hey guys, Tyraku here, and today we're continuing on the series that I've been doing over the past few days, which is gearing your champions, artifacts, and kind of what stats you're going to be wanting to look for when you're gearing specific champions. So today is going to be which stats, which main stats, and which substats you should focus on, primarily as an early game player, but I'm also going to show how you start to transition some of these pieces of gear to moving towards the mid game to the late game to really help your account progress. Now, if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. It's gonna be in the description. I'm gonna try to put it in the top pinned comment as well. So definitely join that. We have a lot of clans ranging from Ultra Nightmare down to easy, normal. If you need to kill the clan boss consistently, join the Discord. We'll get you set up with a clan. Not an issue whatsoever. So definitely check that out. But let's jump right in here. So obviously, as an early game player, your gear selection is very limited. So you're gonna have your starter champion. Hopefully it's Kale. If it's not Kale, it doesn't matter. But whoever your starter champion is, Kale, Aethel, Elaine, Gallic, doesn't matter. That's the main champion you're gonna be gearing out. Now, early game, your champions, all of your starter champions have an ability that has a built-in crit chance. So for this, as an example, Kale's attacks all enemies has a 15% chance to inflict a critical hit. Basically, with this ability, you can feel pretty comfortable with gearing your champion to about 85% crit rate because you know that their hardest hitting ability will be a critical hit. Keep that in mind whenever you're gearing your champions early on. Now, it definitely helps put out some more damage and helps out overall. But when it comes to which stats you're looking for overall as an early game player, obviously, a lot of the gear you have is going to be things like common pieces of gear, maybe a few uncommon pieces of gear every now and then, but you're not going to have a whole lot of substats to work off of. So early game, you have two main priorities you're going to be looking for. One is good main stats on the bottom row pieces of gear, and two, sets to complete those potential set bonuses. For example, get a pair of gloves with a good main stat, and I'll go over which main stats I think are the best for the bottom row pieces of gear as an early game player, but have like a speed set at the bottom and then have a speed set on the top piece. So then you have the two pieces of speed gear, so you'll get that extra 12% speed. Same thing when it comes to, like, say, an accuracy set. I mean, these set bonuses are much more valuable early on in the game as compared to later on in the game. Later on in the game, they're very nice to have, like they're like a little extra luxury, but your substats later on in the game typically can roll even higher than what these set bonuses bring. So it's not as big of a deal as you get later on in the game, but early on, this extra 40 accuracy, for example, is massive. When it comes to gearing your champions early on in the game, some of the stats, some of the subsets you're gonna be looking for, the main ones is speed, crit rate, to at least 85%, and accuracy. Those are the three stats you really want to do. Now let me jump into where you can find these stats from. So the boots. For your champions early on, the only boots you should be wearing, if you come in the stream wearing any other boots besides these boots I'm about to tell you, I'm gonna be upset. Nah, I'm just kidding, but I'm gonna tell you what, go watch this video and change them daggone boots. So you definitely want speed main stat boots for all of your champions early on in the game. I mean, if you go faster than the enemies throughout the campaign, throughout the dungeons, through the arena, you're gonna win. You're gonna have a better shot at winning, at least. So always equip speed boots. There's very few situations where you won't be wearing speed boots, but put speed boots in your champions and it's gonna help out significantly. Like literally that single change, if you're like wearing attack percent or whatever it may be, that single change to speed main stat boots is going to be massive. Obviously, if you can get 5-star pieces, that's even better. Now, when it comes to the substats on these boots, by no means would I would say, hey, say you had crit rate, accuracy, and speed as a substats on a pair of like attack percent boots. Don't take that. The substats will not be enough to justify the massive speed sacrifice you're about to take. Now, later on in the game, yeah, that may work. You may be able to compensate for that lack of speed somewhere else, but early game, no, it's not going to happen. Now, moving on to the chest plate. So as you know, these bottom row pieces of gear are the only ones with differentiating main stats. Now, the chest plate, early on in the game, if your champion applies debuffs, so if your champion applies poisons, if your champion manipulates the turn meter, if your champion really does any effect that's not buffing themselves, you're gonna want accuracy on them. Now, with that said, you gotta be careful with this. So, while accuracy is huge in things like the dungeons, like the dragon, huge on the clan boss, accuracy is not necessarily good when it comes to things like the arena. For like your Kale, people who apply poisons and stuff. Not necessarily good for when it comes to things like campaign farming, campaign in general. Well, things like that, for your champions who apply like poisons and effects that are a little bit slower and take a few turns to really start to build up and matter, you're gonna probably want to go for like a defense percent, HP percent, to give your Kale a little bit more survivability. Obviously, attack percent would be the way to go on Kale, but since you're gonna be so early in the game, going things to give you a little bit more survivability is definitely gonna outweigh that little extra attack percent that you're gonna get. Now, when it comes to people like War Maiden, who place a decreased defense or a debuff that's going to help your entire team, those champions you're going to want to put accuracy chest plates on early in the game, because you don't want those champions to be resisted. So early on, get accuracy wherever possible. It is a huge substat, a huge stat in general. Main stat, substat, it doesn't matter. You're going to want to be looking for accuracy. Now, how high should you take your accuracy? Well, if you're going into dungeons and you're seeing that your War Maiden or your Kale is being resisted a lot, then definitely bump up your accuracy until you don't see those those green resisted text pop up. Then you should be good to go. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to your gloves can have crit rate and crit damage. Those are typically the two things you want your gloves to have. When you're early in the game, you're going to be wearing crit rate because your gear is not going to have enough crit rate itself built in as a substat for you to make sense of it. You're not going to be able to get to 100%. You're not going to be able to get to that 85% without going crit rate as a main stat on your gloves. So always be working on that. If your champion's going to be doing damage, if your champion's going to be like a support type champion, then definitely go for like the defense percent, flat defense even. HP percent or even flat HP, perfectly fine. But don't go for attack percent gloves. Like attack percent and flat attack gloves very rarely have a reasonable place in any lineup, because crit rate and crit damage is miles and miles better than any attack percent glove will be. I mean, making sure you hit your crits is much more valuable than hitting a little bit harder throughout the game. Like, basically, your attack percent gloves you can sell. Like, there's really no reason to have them, just because crit rate and crit damage are so far and beyond better. Now, when it comes to bottom row pieces of gear, if you're early game, you're not going to be seeing a lot of substats on those. Like, you're probably going to be gearing your champions mostly with things like common pieces of gear. But if you are seeing substats, the ones you really want to keep an eye out for are things like HP, defense, accuracy, speed, and crit rate and crit damage. Those are like the main ones you really want to look for. I actually weigh crit rate a little bit higher than crit damage. You can even look for flat HP and defense. That's perfectly fine. Not an issue with that whatsoever, especially before you hit 5-star level 50. So like those level 40s, level 30s, level 20 champions, flat stats work very well. And if you do have a piece of gear with a flat stat down here, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. Don't necessarily worry about selling it. And if it does have resistance or something like this, that's not necessarily a good stat early on in the game, don't worry about selling that either. I mean, roll it up. Like, I have a video that I did a few days ago that actually talks about how the rarity of items work, but roll it and see what kind of substat boosts you get. I mean, early on in the game, basically the two things, like I said, the two things that matter the most are the main stats on pieces of gear and completing your sets. The bottom row, you can get different main stats. You can get the ones that kind of customize your champion more. In the top row, I like to look at this early on in the game as kind of like the pieces that can complete my sets. So say I have a speed glove with crit rate on it. It's just so good. Like, I have to wear this glove. Well, I equip this, and then say I have a pair of boots that are like super good as well. Like these accuracy boots are great. Well, obviously these two don't complete a set together. So I probably don't have a speed chest plate or an accuracy chest plate necessarily. I mean, I may have one of them, but what I'll definitely have is a weapon that is a speed set. So boom, I just equip this weapon, I get the set bonus from this, and I'm not losing out on any main stat that I really want, because this is always attack. Maybe I get some good substats here, but if not, that's no big deal. Like I said, it's early in the game. But if I was to say, well, I really want to complete this speed set with a chest plate, but I need a chest plate with accuracy on it. Well, look, I don't have any speed set chest plate with accuracy on it. So now what am I going to do? Well, I'm kind of screwed. But if I went ahead and complete the set like this, then I could just throw on any other set. Obviously, if I had a speed chest plate, and I do, I have a few right here. If I wanted to equip one of these, that'd be better. I mean, I could have a full speed set. But keep that in mind, when it comes to completing your sets, you can go to the campaign and very, very easily farm a speed weapon, helmet, or shield that's going to be easily equipable to any of your champions. And I used it for a long time exactly like that, to just kind of fill in on some of my champions, just to kind of complete their sets without much of an issue. Now, whenever you're moving into a little bit later in the game, so kind of like that mid-game towards late game stage, you're actually going to be breaking away from the crit rate on your gloves and the accuracy on your chest plates. And instead, let me see if I got a good example for that. I don't think I do necessarily. Not like on my Skull Crown, for example, I have crit damage instead of crit rate. I can get her to basically 100% crit rate through the substats on these pieces of gear. I mean, you can see these are 5 and 6 star pieces of gear, so their substats are significantly higher. You can also see I'm not too worried about the set bonuses here, because like I mentioned earlier on in the video, when you get to these higher levels, the substat rolls are basically as high as the set bonuses would be anyways. Like, they're really good. Now, when it comes to this point of the game, like, I'm taking out those crit rate gloves. I'm trying to get crit damage gloves in instead of wearing an accuracy main stat chest plate. Now, not necessarily for Skull Crown, but instead of wearing an accuracy main stat chest plate, like for somebody like Stag Knight, for example, I'll put an HP percent chest plate on and then run an accuracy banner instead. Now, this, you have to get to 6 star level 60, not necessarily 60. You don't have to be level 60. You just have to be 6 star fully ascended in order to equip a banner. But at this point, you no longer need that accuracy chest plate. So now this opens up your variety of gearing options significantly as compared to before, where you're just like equipping the best main stat possible. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you get a decent idea of what my stat priority is when it comes to early game. Early game, I'm real big on, hey, get a champion who can do decreased defense, get their accuracy fairly high, then build the rest of your champions to more so like when you're going to dungeons and clan boss, stuff like that, build your champions more so to be tanky, take a lot of hits, because you're not really going to be able to push out the damage and the survivability early on in the game. So I really like to focus on just the survivability side of things, because I really think that's going to help you progress more throughout the game. So any pieces of gear that have effects like, I know early on you get a few like divine life sets. These are very good. I mean, this 15% HP plus a 15% HP shield, very nice. I really like that set. Anything that gives you those little extra bonuses, lets you live an extra turn or two, are very good early on in the game. But that's the idea of the substats that I look for. Substats don't mean everything. I mean, like this ring here, great rolls here. This is flat HP. HP percent would be better on a champion like this, and I do have it here, but this is still a great ring. Like, just because it has not amazing substats, as long as the main stats are good, that's really what you're looking for. Like this chest plate, it didn't roll great substats, but it's a part of the shield set that I wanted, and it has 60% HP. So this is an excellent chest plate for what I'm going for. So like I said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps you out. Let me know down in the comment section what types of videos you want to see. If there's anything specific when it comes to gearing your champions, or just overall artifacts in general in the game. If there's anything extra you would like to know. But don't forget to check me out over on Twitch side of things, twitch.tv/Tyraku. Other than that, guys, I'm gonna be popping up 2 more videos you can check out after this. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next video.